I'm AP Townley, and this is Roleplay Culture. Hey, anyone else here tired of their best friends fireballing their characters? Anyone? There are a lot of spells in D&D 5e, hundreds in fact. Some of those are quite famous and very popular. Everyone wants to take these spells, but maybe some are a little too popular, a little overrated, perhaps. Maybe they even suck a little bit. So let's talk about 3 overrated spells in D&D 5e. We shall spare no one in this list and take from the whole body of 5e. We'll also talk about a few alternatives that might get overlooked for these spells. Have you ever wanted to cast a spell to wipe out everything off the face of the map, only to have this happen?
We fight! Run, damn brave asshole!
No, I can't cast the spell when you're in the way. Get out of the way. Starting off with a hot one. Is Fireball the most famous spell in D&D 5e? Maybe. Definitely one of the most popular, iconic even. So what does this spell do? Action to cast, range of 150 feet, and creates an explosion in a 20-foot radius. Enemies make a dex save or take 8d6 fire damage, half on a success. The fire will go around corners, and every level you upcast spell does an extra d6 damage. So this sounds like a big, hard-hitting explosion. It's a big area, does pretty good damage. What's the problem? First, it doesn't upcast very well. An extra 1d6 is not very good for a 4th level or higher spell slot. Admittedly, the fact that it upcasts at all is something at least. But I don't think it's worth it unless you were completely out of 3rd level spells and really needed to cast Fireball in that moment. Then at least you'd get something for the extra spell slot. But the big problem comes with friendly fire. You see, I think the situations in which casting a Fireball is the best choice are more niche than most would like to admit. Sure, if that group of orcs are in a nice little densely packed cluster far away from you and your buddies, then by all means, blow them the hell up. But most of the time, that pack of orcs are going to be spread out, attacking from multiple directions, or even weaving amongst your allies in melee combat, which makes Fireball a very dangerous proposition. I mean, nothing is going to tweak your friend's nerves like getting exploded by their own party member. So if you're in close quarters, like, say, a dungeon, then that awesome area effect of Fireball becomes a real liability. Instead, let's try Hypnotic Pattern. It does require concentration, but it hits a similar area. It's a 30-foot cube. It has a similar range. It lasts for a minute, and when they fail their wisdom save, they become charmed, incapacitated, and their speed is 0. Basically, they're taken out of the fight. Once they fail that save, unlike many spells, they don't get any more saves to escape the spell. It lasts for a minute, or until an action is taken to wake them up, or they take damage. Yes, you can still hit your own party with this, but it doesn't do any damage, and it's easy to get them out of it, so no big deal. Hypnotic Pattern can just end combat encounters, even against enemies with high hit points. Fireball only does an average of 28 hit points of damage. If you're fighting enemies with more than that, then casting that spell is unlikely to end the encounter. Hurt them? Yes, but not end it outright. Don't get me wrong, sometimes casting Fireball and blowing up a horde of goblins is the best thing in the world, but maybe not as often as we really want it to be. Time to run some cheetah blood on it.
I feel the need for speed.
Haste? I know how much people love this spell, but not a fan. Action to cast, lasts for a minute, with concentration, and has a range of 30 feet. This is a buff on a creature that gives several benefits. +2 to AC, speed doubled, and advantage on dex saves. But it's the last part that everyone is after. You get an extra action. But the actions are really limited. You can only use it to dash, disengage, hide, use an object, or attack. So no spell casting or anything like that. And if you do attack, you can only ever make one attack with that action. even if you have the extra attack feature or some other ability. This spell usually shines when you have a very hard-hitting character in your party. You put it on like a big old barbarian with the Great Weapon Master feat, or an archer with sharpshooter. Even better, if you're a sorcerer with Twin Spell and cast Haste on both of those characters, awesome. But even under those optimal conditions, it can be very risky. You see, there's a part of this spell that many fail to mention, and that's what happens when you end the spell, either on purpose or from when you lose concentration. Because if that does happen, then those under the effect of that spell can't take actions or move until the end of their next turn. So, in trying to empower our deadliest warrior, you could potentially take them out of the fight. And just ain't worth it to me. Especially if you don't have that optimized character to enhance. Instead, let's look to Haste's underappreciated sibling, Slow. Similar action and duration, but has a range of 120 feet that hits an area of 40 foot cubed, so a big area to affect. But it doesn't hit everyone, which is a good thing. We really want to avoid friendly fire from this nasty debuff. Instead, we pick 6 targets and they make wisdom saving throws. Should they fail, well, they're about to have a very bad day. Their speed is halved. -2 to AC and dex saves. They can't use reactions, so bye-bye attacks of opportunity. And on their turn, they can only take an action or a bonus action, not both. If they make a melee or ranged attack, they can only make 1 per turn, regardless of their abilities. Oh, and don't worry, spellcasting hasn't been left out either. If they cast a spell with an action, they roll a d20, and on an 11 or higher, that spell won't take effect until the next turn, and only if they use their next turn's action, else they'll lose that spell altogether. They do get to make saving throws at the end of each turn to throw the spell off, but youch, this spell really sucks. For your enemies, at least. Slow is one of my favorite spells, and it's rarely talked about. There is a caveat on my criticism here, though. Haste is a spell that has one player supporting another, and that sort of teamwork in gameplay has a lot of value when discussing the health of the RPG world. So there is that. I just think this spell is very overrated and isn't anywhere near as fun as Slow. Let's make some Disney magic with Animate Objects.
I command you to stop!
This one, it hurts the heart. I love this spell so much. And it's really hard to admit, but it might be a bit overhyped. It's a cool spell, to be sure, but it's got its problems, though maybe different from what we've been discussing so far. Action to cast, range of 120 feet, and lasts for a minute with concentration. You can animate up to 10 tiny objects, like coins, all the way up to one huge object like a big boulder, and a variety of objects and numbers in between. You can use a bonus action to move them around in what most use it for, attack. Some might use the spell to animate something big to move it out of your way, but most are going to use it in combat. And the most efficient use in combat, in my opinion, is to animate 10 tiny objects to fight for you. They each have +8 to hit, do 1d4 plus 4 damage, have 20 hit points, and have an AC of 18. They're an armored flying swarm of piranha, and it works very well. You can surround an enemy with these and tear them to shreds while absorbing their attacks, or split them up and distract multiple enemies. It's a very efficient spell. So what's the problem? The problem has to do with how things work at the table. I would like to think that I'm a very experienced player when I use animate objects in this particular way. That is to say, animating 10 tiny objects for combat, very organized. I've got enough dice to have 10 d20s for attack rolls and 10 d4s for damage. I can roll all my d20s and separate them from least to highest, consult the DM, and then roll the damage all together and do a lot of quick math. And even with all that, it still takes me more than twice as long as all the other players to do their turn. That can really bog down gameplay. And if the player is not so efficient or experienced, if for some reason they're rolling with disadvantage, or if the enemy has resistance to the damage of the objects causing the players to roll their d4s individually, I mean, I've seen those turns take 10, 15 minutes. The player who went before is going to be like asleep by the time the turn gets back around to them. And that's the problem with this spell. It is engineered, however unintentionally, to slow down the game, which is never good. So maybe let's take a spell that has been popularized by Scandon Shorthot himself. Every time I make a character capable of using these two spells, I always pick Animate Objects over and never Bigsby's Hand, or Scanlan's Hand, or Arcane Hand, or whatever the hell they're calling it now. Similar to Animate Objects, action to cast, range of 120 feet, and duration concentration up to a minute. You create a large-sized hand made from force energy. It mimics your hand, so you can move it around and pick stuff up or whatever. It's got an AC of 20 and hit points equal to your maximum. That makes this thing pretty hard to destroy. And when you cast the spell, and as a bonus action on subsequent turns, you can move the hand 60 feet and do one of very specific actions. You can attack with the fist, doing 4d8 force damage, push enemies around. You can grapple targets with the hand and then crush them to do 2d6 plus your spellcasting stat in bludgeoning damage. Or more uniquely, you can interpose the hand between you and an enemy that you choose that will constantly stay between the two of you. It will give you half cover, and if the enemy wants to move past the hand, it has to have a higher strength score, and the hand strength is 26. So good luck. Of course, they can also destroy the hand, but hey, at least those attacks aren't coming at you. This spell upcasts pretty nicely, with the 2 damaging options increasing by 2 dice each per level. This is just an interesting spell. It has unique features, it is very versatile, and a bit underappreciated. I think it's lived in the shadow of Animate Objects for too long. And maybe one day, I'll choose Bigby's Hand over Animate Objects. Maybe. Once. Here's hoping. So there are a couple of overrated spells for the D&D 5e, and a few underappreciated options to replace them. I still love most of these spells. They get the attention that they do for a reason. Except for Haste. Still can't stand that spell. If you like this video, then you be sure to subscribe, ring the bell, smash that like button. Tell us in the comments below which spells you think are overrated. And I'll see you in the parlor.